You know, there are animals that breathe air. However, they seem more at home in the water. Take the beaver, for instance.
What? It's not like I've got anything to add. Why are you looking at me like that?
The beaver is amazing because it's an engineer. They build their beaver dams with engineering skill. As a matter of fact, engineers study beaver dams to see how to build strength into a dam and to see how to channel water. It's like the beaver knows all this. And so our engineers go to college and then they study what the beaver. It's like the brain surgeons studying the woodpecker. It's like God gave us examples in His creation of how to do things right.
Well, why didn't He just give us these capabilities? I mean, could you imagine all the pain that would have been saved if we had slightly thicker skulls? Quite literally all the pain that could have been saved, and also if we were hot-wired to build stable structures. I thought we were supposed to be God's #1 creation. It doesn't really match up. Greetings and welcome there, people of YouTube. This is Essence of 40, continuing with my Than Incredible Creationists who Defy Logic series, which has a couple more episodes to go of this single mockumentary, so I decided finally let's get back in the ring and deal with these last 2 episodes. So with that said, let us continue.
Well, anyway, a beaver builds his house, and he usually has a couple of entrances coming in under the water, and he makes his house in such a way that the bad gases that build up in there can escape. Oxygen can come in, but he builds it in such a way that it will stay dry in there. And so they can have little baby beavers in there, and they have a nice, dry, clean place to be. He will store food in the bottom of the stream or the river, and that means he has to be underwater frequently. Well, in the winter, where most beavers live, it gets very cold. Has God made a provision for that? Oh yes, He sure has. A beaver goes underwater. He has like transparent eyelids, water goggles, and he can see through his eyelids under the water, and that's to keep the dirt out of his eyes that's floating around. He has nose flaps that close, keeps the water out of his nose, ear flaps that close, keeps the water out of his ears. He has a special thing that I like. He has fur-lined flaps in the back of his mouth that cover his throat and his molars, his big teeth in the back. Now his front teeth, they must not be sensitive, because those are the ones that he uses to chew down and chew through the trees, and they wear down, and they keep growing, and he'll wear them off, they keep growing, and so they must not be sensitive, but his back teeth are. And so God made him little fur-lined flaps to protect them from the cold ice water in the wintertime. And then you think about the way a beaver swims, and he can take a branch that has a load, a drag on it, and he can swim across even a stream with a current, and he wants to come over here, but he's over here, and there's a current, and he's dragging a branch, and he can go right straight across there. He'll compensate. So he's making mathematical calculations, and he is figuring out what kind of rudder action he needs with his tail to compensate for the drag and for the current in the stream, and he gets to where he wants to go every single time. I don't think evolution has an explanation for that, but I think my God does.
There wasn't much there that was particularly spectacular. I mean, firstly, beavers are rodents, hence, yeah, they wear down their teeth. All rodents do that, and the teeth grow back gradually as well. It's not amazing, it's not unseen, it's not spectacular. Also, those amazing flaps of fur are merely lips that have moved from in front of the chisel-like teeth to behind the chisel-like teeth to protect the molars and the throat, etc. It's not unseen, and it's not the only animal with this feature. Mole rats have the exact same feature because they use their mouths to dig through dirt, and with these lips behind the chisel-like teeth which they use for digging, ensures that they don't end up with a gut full of dirt. It's not spectacular at all. It's quite clear that this could have evolved, and it's quite clear the way it evolved. Lips simply, gradually moved further and further back till they ended up behind the chisel front teeth. As for the other features, meet the capybara, the world's largest living rodent, which also has a love for water, yet not to the same extent as the beaver. It's very possible for a capybara-like creature that once held the niche that the capybara now holds to have first evolved in a warmer, less seasonal climate, and then evolved the capacities of the beaver more and more until over time it grew in the area that it could breed, i.e. its breeding range increased, therefore its chance of survival increased, etc. So yeah, it's not particularly amazing. As for the constructional aspects, the beavers that build structurally sound dams are more likely to survive and thus pass on that instinct. There's nothing at all amazing about any of this. It can all be explained quite easily, actually.
Another animal is the duck-billed platypus. And this animal is fascinating. It's similar to a beaver in that it spends a lot of its time in water, has webbed feet, and lays eggs. Kind of strange for a mammal. But anyway, the thing that is fascinating is the way it finds its food. A platypus eats little tiny shrimp that it finds under the water. But when it goes in the water, unlike the beaver, which has clear eyelids, the platypus closes his eyes. He has nose flaps that close, so he's not seeing anything, he's not smelling anything. So how does he find the shrimp? He has inside of himself a mechanism that detects the electrical impulses in the tail of the shrimp between the muscle and the nerve. When the nerve sends an impulse to the muscle, there's a tiny little electrical impulse, and the platypus reads that electrical impulse, and that is what leads it to its food. They have done experiments where they have put dead shrimp in a tank with flashlight batteries, and the platypus will go to the flashlight battery because there's an electrical current there. So he finds his food by reading the electrical currents, those tiny little electrical currents. That's a miracle, absolute miracle.
Do you want to know what's also special about the platypus? It is a mammal that lays eggs. It is a key intermediate species between reptile and mammal taxonomy. It also helps us understand the development of milk during its evolutionary lineage, coming from, first of all, sweat glands. Milk was originally just sweat. As for the electrical aspects, how is that amazing? Some creatures have heightened senses in areas that we humans are very poor in. Your cognitive bias tells you to take this as the brilliant design of your God with this specific animal. Yet if you are honest with yourself, it would actually show you and reveal to you that the supposed design of humans, the apparent pinnacle of creation, is very poor in a number of areas.
I don't know about you, but I am no fan of spiders. Which gets me thinking, how could something so creepy and crawly be incredible?
Well, how about the fact that these little arachnids manage to scare the crap out of billions of people globally?
There's a spider that we have down in Texas, and it's other places around the United States, called the black and yellow garden spider. Some people call it the zipper spider, because in the middle of its web, it always makes a little characteristic mark. It's like a little zipper of floss that it makes. And this spider is just amazing. We raised some of these spiders. We don't raise them, they just grow there at our house. And so we watch them, and we feed them things like grasshoppers and crickets. And they have 7 different kinds of webbing that they make. They make a certain kind of webbing that is not sticky. And that is what they will run out on their web to catch a little bug. They have another kind of webbing that is sticky, that catches the bugs. And these webs are not small. A garden spider, a full-grown female spider, probably has a web about 2 feet across. She's going to be, about 2.5 inches across. And they'll do interesting things. If you get up very close to them, when they're just quietly sitting there on their web, sometimes they will start making their web shake like a trampoline. It'll come out at you, and they're saying, "Get away from me, I don't want you near me." But then when they catch a bug, they'll run out and they'll catch this bug, and they shoot sheets of webbing, and they'll spin that bug around and shoot sheets out, not just little fine strands. And I think that's fascinating how they can control that. They know, I need a sheet of webbing for this job, whereas I need a strand of webbing for this job. I need a strand of sticky webbing for this job. They know what they want to do. Some of them, after they're born, the little spiderlings, and as a matter of fact, the female will put, 30 to 55 eggs in her little egg sac. Another interesting thing, she makes this egg sac out of different kinds of webbing. And she'll spin this little sac, and then she wraps it with a flossy kind of webbing, and ultimately she'll spin almost a tannish brown color webbing. So she even has different colors of webbing, but she fills this egg. You'd think she'd fill it from the top. She fills it from the bottom. She goes under it and puts her eggs up in it, and then each egg she will dust with like a fine powdery dust, which is another little factory she has in herself so that the eggs don't stick to each other. And she'll push all those eggs up in there and then seal the bottom. And sometimes she'll do this in the fall. And we have one of these at our house right now that's sitting there, and next spring the eggs will hatch out. So it sits there all winter long. And so sometimes these little spiders, when they hatch out, they decide, I think I want to go to Acapulco. I don't know what they think, but they'll come out and they'll shoot out streamers of webbing and wait for the wind to catch it. And then they'll let go of the web, and the wind picks them up. And people have found these spiders as much as 15,000 feet up in the air. They have traced them 1,500 miles flying. I think that's fascinating. How does a spider decide, today I'm going to take a trip? I'm going to throw out the webbing, and I think I need to go somewhere else. But that's how they spread themselves around.
The fact is, the spiders don't decide whether they want to go or not, but rather it has become instinct. Having a couple hundred babies grow up in a single spot will lead to either overpredation of normal prey or cannibalism, because yes, many spiders are cannibalistic. The reason they have so many eggs to begin with in the first place, around 400 to 1,400 eggs to be given an estimate, is just because so many of them will die. The system isn't perfect, so the mother spider takes the route of quantity over quality. Spiders, when moving around, sometimes anchor themselves in case of falling. It is very easy for this habit to have become evolutionary advantage through aerial dispersion.
And another interesting thing is, as they grow, their shell doesn't grow. They have like an outside shell. So they have to get out of there. And if they don't, they die. Well, how are they going to get out? Well, they have a little factory inside themselves that makes precisely the right fluid. It's called molting fluid, so that they can, on a certain day, they squirt this molting fluid in a certain place on their shell. Has to be the right place, and it dissolves the shell and makes like a little trap door. And so they can push that little trap door up, crawl out of that shell, and then they start growing a new one. And they molt several times as they're growing. Well, you would say, now, let me think a minute. If evolution is true, how would a spider be able to develop this little factory to make the molting fluid so that it can dissolve the shell? So it has to be the right fluid, so it will be the right thing to dissolve the shell, but it has to dissolve it in the right place or it still can't get out. And all of that has to happen on exactly the right day, or the spider dies inside the shell. So, survival of the fittest. We should not have black and yellow garden spiders.
Fact. The spider has not evolved this trait on its own, but merely improved or changed upon existing features dependent on carapace differentiation. It is a trait that existed long before spiders had yet evolved, back with the earliest vertebrates. Shells are not of one thickness or toughness. This is shown by the molting process itself. There is a range of solidity that can exist. Early vertebrates were, simply put, mushy-mushy. Some may have developed some form of papery protection that gave some resistance to early mouth parts, or solid plates on specific and vulnerable parts of the body. Fact is, if the creature evolved another chemical cycle like that of the call to breed, but one that weakened the shell, it would allow for the exoskeleton to get tougher and then become weakened at some point and shed. I'd like to remind you that chemicals can have a very strong effect even in humans. For example, when dealing with stress, there are a number of physical effects. Something that may first off seem rather negative for the insect could, over generations, be refined to remove most of the negative aspects of the cycle by becoming centralized in a specific spot and having less and less of a general effect and having instead more of a localized one. However, there are problems with this so-called design, if that's what you want to call it. They make the animal incredibly vulnerable during this period, especially ocean-bearing crustaceans such as the lobster or crab. Fish have evolved the capability to home in on the chemicals from soft shells, so it makes pretty good bait. That's why you can use soft shell crabs as bait. But it's pretty shitty if you're a crab or lobster. But this is how evolution works. It is an arms race between predator and prey.
Now, some people see those big spiders and they like to squash them. And I say, let those little things live. They eat other harmful bugs and different kinds of things, and they're a pretty spider, and they're fun to watch. And so God has made His creatures and His creation so that we will study it, and study it carefully.
You couldn't study your way out of a wet paper bag.
And then the whole idea is, as we study it, we will give Him thanks and give Him glory. And I think that's how we ought to study the things that God has made.
With a big dose of confirmation bias.
Maybe spiders aren't so bad after all. How come I didn't learn any of this in school?
Is it because you are mentally lazy?
I have some more studying to do.
And that's why I'm here. I know the last few excerpts have just been digs, but of course I already went through all the points that he made and pointed out that no, there's really nothing amazing here, per usual. So yeah, that's the end of this video. I hope you guys have enjoyed. If you'd like to support my work, then please check out my Patreon. Don't forget to click like, comment, subscribe, as well as share on Facebook and Twitter. You can also check out my Facebook and Twitter, as I do post updates there now and then. This is Essence of Thought, hoping you're all doing well. Take care and out.